Hi. Oh, hi. Are we on?
You're on.
Welcome to There's a Will. I'm Will, and this is Nicholas Richardson, and this is Bruce Roberts. And we're going to have a talk about things that are going on,
Excellent.
of which there are plenty right
Too
now.
many.
Especially here. I call it the front line. It's not true, but that's what I like to call it. I was thinking about calling the show front line, but it was taken.
It's all relative.
Exactly. That's what Nicholas says, too. Nicholas knows it's all. Bob Dylan is 81 and still touring.
Yeah, well, all these guys
Yeah.
are.
It's
Look at
impressive.
the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger weighs 161 pounds.
It's incredible.
He's svelte, isn't he?
Very
And yes, isn't he? And Ed Sheeran, Eat Your Heart Out. That was the
Yeah.
he's not old enough to tour or write good songs. Okay. Amber Heard, he's got to be 80. He'll write some good songs when he's 55. Amber Heard did finally get cut from Aquaman 2. Did you know that, Bruce?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Bruce is from August Mission, folks.
Yes.
He's going to talk about his missions.
Is this
Yeah.
Amber Heard? What did she hear?
She, you know who's
Johnny
going to
Depp, apparently, more than once.
What?
She heard Johnny Depp, or at least she was supposed to be hearing him.
Yes, that's right. She heard some things.
Yeah.
Now,
I haven't seen Aquaman 1, so the abandonment of Aquaman 2 will make no difference to my life at all.
What is scatological word does Heard rhyme with? I mean,
Curd.
scatological, not
Curd,
eschatological.
as
That
in
would be-
making milk or butter.
Yes, curd.
Or
That's
cheese,
the
rather.
one I was thinking of.
Yes,
Yeah.
you were.
It's not scatological there.
That's not.
But you know who's going to replace her in Aquaman 2?
I've no idea.
Johnny Depp.
Oh, there it comes.
Yeah, Johnny Depp.
Really?
That was what it was all about, the whole trial. He wanted to replace her in Aquaman
I doubt
2.
that.
He's growing his hair. It's long.
It's long enough already.
Hasn't he taken enough, Will?
He's taken enough. Yeah, he's taken enough. Here, so I think Amber Heard is perfectly lovely. Beautiful lady. Okay, economics. In economics this week, great news. Everything is up.
Yes.
Oh.
Is looking up. Yeah, everything is good. Actually, Trevor Noah made a joke about that, but it's true. Trevor Noah is a guy on TV in America. But gas is up, rents are up, taxes are up, inflation is up. You can go to the store, and well, actually, if you have jars of spaghetti sauce at home, and you go to the store now, it's increased doubled its price in like a year. So they're thinking of going to the tomato standard, or tomato in your case.
Tomato.
Tomato standard instead of on the silver, gold, the hard metals. They're just going to use tomatoes because apparently tomato sauce is just. Anyway, that's all I got. I thought we'd just start with some news because it's important. But no news. The reason I did that. Part of the reason I did it was just have fun. But the other thing is because no news of the Ukraine has just gone off the news now.
Really?
Or I said the Ukraine. I mean the news about the Ukraine.
Yeah, I don't, well, I'm not sure. I mean, poor Vladimir Zelensky, the president, of course, today faces a grave trial that the Macron, Schultz and Draghi are going there. The Italian and the German and the French leaders. And somehow, those three together, it's bound to be in trouble for Ukraine, I suspect.
Yes, well, Bruce is going to be over there pretty soon. That's interesting. I wonder if they're going over to convince him to surrender.
Probably.
You know?
Yeah, the French are good at that. They like to, but it's a bit late because the French like to surrender before the war's actually started.
Yeah, it's they have
typically.
all their
No, joking apart.
all their tanks only have one
Joking apart,
gear.
Schultz said last week in a speech that nobody had supplied more weaponry to Ukraine than Germany. I'm amazed he could actually say that with a straight face. Macron has said, oh, well, there'll come a point when Ukraine has to sit down with Russia, and we should be at the table as well. And the Italians, they've always been quite pro-Russian, I think, for a long time. So, joking apart, they're not actually going to tell him to surrender, but it wouldn't be the same as having Boris Johnson, Joe Biden and somebody else with a bit of firepower turning up to encourage him.
Yeah, it's this is the defeatist.
This is the defeatist
triad.
trio. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're very upset that things our comfortable lives are not quite as comfortable as they were, so will you please surrender?
Yeah.
Is the subtext. They won't actually say it like that, of course, but everything they said up to this point would suggest that's their true feeling, I think.
Yes, this is the interesting banter that leads to our special guest star.
Yes, exactly. Who knows more about Ukraine than we do, probably.
Who knows tons. Bruce Roberts, you are, I don't remember what your position is with August
I'm
Mission.
the CEO for August Mission.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And but I don't want general manager, CEO, which because I still have your card. We met in early April. Was it the first week of April? Or
yes,
something like that?
I believe so. Yeah.
There was a conference
hosted by the U.S. Embassy, the Department of Commerce.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the UN got involved there, and they were.
Yeah.
It was kind of a
UN was there. Yeah.
joint effort. Yes.
Yeah, and there were a lot of private entrepreneurs doing various things. Very interesting. I went to the logistics one. That was the interesting one.
Yes, it was interesting in the same way that, well, how do I say? Was it
interesting because it was
a little bit painful.
Yeah, it was also painful.
Yeah, it was very
it's
painful.
interesting in the Chinese way as well as just being chock full of facts.
Yeah.
But there were people doing all kinds of things: medical equipment, moving food, nutrition, medical supplies, and that's what you do.
It's interesting to listen to them talk, right? Everyone's very passionate about their, whatever the need they're trying to fill is, right? Whatever that specific thing that they are really getting behind, and everyone's looking for help to, further that specific agenda, which is interesting when you get in those types of situations with everybody, and they just have their little piece of the pie they're trying to source.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting conversation.
Lots of little ships.
Yes.
Little boats, what we call the Dunkirk effect.
The Dunkirk effect, yes.
The little boats and of bringing the people and bringing stuff over, and effective in its own way, but still needing organization. How have things changed? Tell me your impressions of getting here, and how things have changed in the last 2 months.
So to your we were joking earlier, but to your previous point, one of the things that has changed is that Ukraine is not in the forefront of the news as much as it was 2 months ago. So I think it's still a big topic, a major topic of conversation, but people are worried about markets and other things right now, and it's kind of interesting to see that. Of course, the Ukrainians are very much in the middle of it still, and not much has changed for them. But I think
it's even worse.
It is, but I think a lot about it's to your point. I think a lot about we're starting to get weary of that conversation.
Yeah.
War fatigue.
Yeah.
But it happens quickly nowadays.
It does.
With the attention spans, they're so limited.
Very short.
Well, attention spans generally in all sorts of areas are so limited now.
Yeah.
And the politicians, of course, they have a very short attention span.
Hey, nothing takes more concentration than war.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, behind the scenes, the professional, the army, and people are doing a lot. And I was reading a thing in the paper this morning before I came here about the military base an American military base in Germany, where they have a special multinational, if you like, logistics section, which spends all day and every day working out how to send bits of kit from the West, for want of a better word, into Ukraine by all sorts of routes, some of which the people in the military don't know, because to actually prevent the risk of spying or information getting out, even the senior military members of this particular organisation, they get the weaponry to point A, but assuming point A is not actually in Ukraine, and once it gets into Ukraine and when it goes in, where it goes into Ukraine, they don't know, because to actually keep the lid on information, which is quite fascinating. And this particular section employs 100 people now. Just these people, these soldiers spend all day just moving bits of kit about and procuring bits of kit to be sent to Ukraine, which is very exciting and what they need. I mean, the Ukrainians clearly do need is more heavy artillery more quickly.
They need a lot of everything, from body armor to...
Well, that is the other thing, which of course we don't hear about, is some of the basic stuff. I was reading another thing by a British soldier who is now working there. He left the British Army, but is now working, has been in Ukraine for a number of years. And he said some of the soldiers will be seeing terrible eye injuries because they don't have basic goggles and things of that nature. And his view was that if the Ukrainian, given what the Ukrainians have achieved with essentially virtually nothing, if they had had the kit that they said they needed, and if it had been delivered when they had asked for it, they would not only have held the Russians back, but the Russians would have been pushed out of the whole of Ukraine, including Crimea by now, because of their fighting spirit and their ability.
That's
so
right.
they're doing a lot with nothing. So
That's
if
right.
only we
Well,
gave them something, they
they've
would do much more.
I've heard they've got some troops going forward with not even the proper, armaments, personal armaments. But I'd like to come back to Bruce.
Yeah, of course.
And Bruce, I'm going to give you. I want you to give us the basics about August Mission, its history, and your mission.
Yeah,
now
very
here.
much happy to.
Could you do that, please?
Sure. So August Mission's a American nonprofit organization. We're based in Utah, out of Salt Lake City area. It's something that I founded last year, so we're a pretty young organization. I am a retired Army officer, and when I retired last year, I was looking for something to do. My wife still works, but I was getting involved in a couple different things, and it was last summer at about the time that the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. Regardless of what your politics and thoughts are on that, I think there's a lot of Americans, a lot of people felt like we just didn't do that properly.
Sorry, just to interrupt.
No, on this show,
but
we
it's-
shouted, jumped up and down about it.
But it's interesting. Can you imagine what a difference it would have made if the Ukrainians had been given the kit
That was
the
there.
Americans abandoned in Afghanistan?
I know.
Oh,
I know.
yeah.
Well, I didn't even know there were that many Humvees in the world, let
I know.
alone left behind in
Well,
Afghanistan.
There's some interesting statistics there. If you look at it, the Taliban became like have the fifth largest fleet of helicopters in the world after we left, or something like that.
when
Yeah, it's pretty
I mean, we didn't know at that time.
Yeah, but they don't have spare parts, so it's a
it's
waste for
but it's
them,
such
a waste for us.
but
They
it's
don't
a
have
waste
pilots.
of
No,
a tremendous
It's all a
waste
waste.
of
And they
money.
can't use it, so that's,
Yeah,
come
but even
on.
so, the Ukrainians probably
Yeah.
could have been made to
They
taught how
could-
to
They
use
could have
it.
been used, and they have plenty of spare parts over on this side.
Yeah, certainly the
of the
Humvees
world.
and things
This-
like that.
this is-
The armoured vehicles and the guns.
Yeah.
Very true.
I mean, as an ex-Utah Army, and what were you doing in the Army?
I did several different things, but started off as an infantry officer, spent some time in military intelligence, ended up in special operations logistics.
Very interesting. That's a
yeah.
whole other subject.
It is.
I'm very interested in that. I've been
moved
to a
stuff
few
around.
war zones and met some interesting people out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But tell us more about your mission.
well, what it's got,
Use this as a springboard for getting information.
Sure,
about
and
what you're doing.
I got involved with some friends of mine. I had people that I knew still in Afghanistan. I had my interpreter, some of his family. I helped him come to the States and become an American citizen. And he was reaching out to me, saying, "Hey, can you help my family? Is there something we can do?" And we started making phone calls and seeing if there were ways for us to help facilitate moving some of these people out and helping them. And at the time, we were just joking a minute ago about Dunkirk, right? But there was what was called, I don't know if you heard the term, a digital Dunkirk happening at that time, which was basically everyone reaching out over different digital platforms to connect the dots, to verify who these people were, to hook them up with the right sources over there, or give them the right credentials or bona fides to get on a plane and help them escape. And so there was a lot of that happening, and we kind of got involved with helping some of those folks. And I say we, me and a couple friends of mine. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine who's been very successful in business. And he just kind of randomly brought it up, said, what are your feelings about what's happening in Afghanistan? I said, well, it's quite frankly, it's embarrassing, and it hurts my heart a little bit that we're failing to live up to our commitments to these people.
Yeah.
And so I got to talking to him, and he felt the same way. And he just said, well, I said, if you, this was right at the same time where I was helping people get out and just informally, and I said to him, I said, well, if you could do something about it, would you be willing? He said, absolutely. So got the wheels turning. I thought, well, with a little bit of resources, we could take this a long ways. Next thing you know, August Mission is born, and we decided to do this formally and create an actual organization that helps people. And so our mission statement at the time was, to perform resettlement and rescue, recovery, and provide humanitarian aid to refugees and displaced persons. So we started doing that. The to help Afghans, and we had a list of about 200 Afghans we're helping. And then Ukraine happens, and our mission statement is to help refugees, resettle, recover, provide humanitarian assistance. So we're like, well, this is our mission statement. We have to get involved. So early on, like first week of March, we launched some people over here to Poland. We created some contacts in Poland that got on the ground, and our first mission really was to assess the situation. Where we see our niche at August Mission is we're a small organization. We've got a lot of former military guys. We're not a veterans organization, but we think like that. And so what we want to do is get on the ground early, assess the situation, and then fill in the gaps, right? Do the things that the big organizations aren't doing, or they're incapable of doing, or are not interested in doing. Try to find underserviced populations, or these things that we can really do something specific that needs to be done that's not getting done. And there's a lot of that right now in Ukraine. I mean, if you're looking for problems, if you're looking for people to help, there's an endless amount, right? And every situation that you come across is a heartbreaking situation. So it's the amount of help that's needed is almost endless right now, and it's still to that degree inside Ukraine, because there's still so many people that, we talk about all the ones that have come here that have become refugees by crossing a border, but there's still hundreds of thousands of displaced persons that haven't left Ukraine. They've just been displaced from their homes, but they still have everything they own in a sack, on their back, and so there's just an endless amount of help or opportunities to help, and we got on the ground early here in March and started going into Ukraine and just looking for those opportunities to help people, and looking for specific places where we could insert ourselves and try to make a difference. And we're just making a little chink in it because it's such a big problem, but we try to do what we can. So it feels good, and I will tell you.
Do you feel you're making progress?
We are, and the thing that I like about August Mission
let me
is
just say, we're gonna wind down and finish the first segment. Then there's a commercial break.
Yeah.
In the second segment, we'll talk about specific things.
Sure.
This is all background, just to give people some background of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
We try to do that with the people that come in doing this kind of work.
What I like it too about getting into this is that for me, it feels like I've been repurposed, right? I feel like this is meaningful work, and that's what keeps me engaged. Is something that solving a hard problem, helping somebody, doing something that feels meaningful at the end of the day, doesn't feel like work. I get up out of bed and
nowadays, so many people are looking for some kind of meaning in their lives, and it's funny that that kind of meaning often appears in calamities.
Yes.
And the cleanup, or the mitigation of calamity, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a shame it takes the calamity to bring it about. But
they say that in the Battle of Britain that it really was the finest hour of in terms of people's behaviour.
I think it was and I think it was the one time in 1,000 years, more or less, 940 years or 900 years, when the government of the day probably assumed that the nation was, for that first time, likely to be invaded. And it had got that close, actually.
Yeah, well, Ukraine has been invaded.
Well, Ukraine has been invaded, yes.
And that's kind of what I was thinking of, the thought of invasion.
Well, we were lucky. We were an island, and we had these magnificent people in the Air Force.
Of course, Poland has had so many scrapes.
I think it is the closest we've come since William the Conqueror.
I think so too.
And there was and I think Churchill was very good at keeping up morale, but I think there was I think there was a feeling that it might not be enough this time, that this could be the moment. But fortunately, we had Churchill, and we had Spitfires and Hurricanes.
Yeah.
And we had and the Germans, unfortunately, or fortunately from our point of view, were led by a man who insisted on interfering. Now, Churchill interfered in military strategy, but because of the way our system works, the generals could more or less ignore it and get on with it. In the totalitarian context, when Hitler intervened, nobody was brave enough to stand up to him, or if they did, they were taken out and shot. So
that sounds like a familiar narrative right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I also, exactly. I also brought up this particular idea and historical occurrence because Zielinski has, I think, read a lot of Churchill, because some of this stuff is right out of his handbook of
Well, yes, and everybody thought,
handbook,
everybody thought, oh well, Zelensky, what is he, he's a comedian, he's a joke president. Many people thought that Churchill was not a credible prime minister.
No, they thought it was
and
terrible
it was
idea.
on a knife edge when he became prime minister.
Terrible idea.
The king didn't want him
Yeah.
to be prime minister. He wanted Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the Conservative Party didn't want him, and it was only because actually of that generation, Halifax realised that Halifax, couldn't actually really do the job. That
Well, Churchill never recovered from Gallipoli.
no, which again
And,
was not really his fault in the sense that.
No, but he was blamed.
No, I know.
You know what
well, he
Gallipoli
was. But I mean, the point.
Military
I mean,
history,
yeah. If you look at Gallipoli, they were
Soldiers have to
unfortunate
know
because
these things.
Yes.
the Royal Navy, when they started, one of their ships hit a mine.
Yeah.
And they weren't to know at the time, but that was fluke because the mines were actually somewhere else. And had they the next day continued, they would have been successful.
They'd have been fine.
You know, people don't have the communications
It's
or the
often
knowledge.
like that. It's a close run thing.
It often
Bruce-
is an
Bruce
amazing
jumped
place
in
for
there.
anything.
It's interesting that you know that sometimes, and that happens. I've seen it happen as a military guy. You know, you one mistake can follow you, right? That cast a cloud or a pall that just hangs over your career for a long, long time. Now,
It never goes away. Patton,
yeah.
for example.
Now, if we, yes, right, yeah.
Prime example, isn't he?
Yeah, although if we look at historically, well, I would say I can't apply this necessarily to, like, you know, the British military, but in the American military, you know, generals back then could make mistakes typically,
Yeah.
and were able to recover from them. These days, it's there's a lot more zero tolerance type of an attitude.
Zero tolerance
Because-
because of social media, but zero tolerance by people who themselves have never actually achieved anything and never made a decision.
I gotta
but they
cut
can
you off.
sit in the background and criticise you and destroy your career because of something you may or may not have tweeted 10 years ago. It's
Ding.
ridiculous.
They used to do that on William Buckley's firing line. They have a bell that goes off, so
Yeah.
everybody knows. We'll be right back. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, with Bruce Roberts from August Mission. I want to say the August Mission. August because of the month, or August because it's so great, or its intentions are so purposeful.
You're one of the few people to pick up on the double meaning. Well,
Thank you very much. You see, and he didn't even tell me that. I may not know what sartorial means.
Clearly not.
Obviously. That's how you've just insulted my non-existent tailor.
Exactly.
And Nicholas Richardson, no relation, still.
Still.
We're still looking.
Yep.
Yeah, and one day we're going to find, I was going to say the missing link.
I thought of Missing Link as well, but it probably doesn't sound very good.
This is all right with some
Yeah.
crazy chimpanzee.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you're going a
and people
long
say,
way back.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Yeah.
They would, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. People are terrible. I hate them all. But not Bruce, because Bruce has his heart in the right place. He's come
Trying
from the
to.
west, from the great Salt Lake,
Yes.
bringing succor and sustenance to people under pressure.
Assistance.
Assistance, yes.
Everyone-
You sent some advance people in March, and then you
Yes.
yourself appeared. We met at that, as we said before, at the embassy
In April.
meeting, which was quite useful for networking. And we have a friend in common, David Kaiser, longtime resident of
Long time.
Poland.
Great
And,
guy.
yeah.
And he's been really contributing a lot to the effort.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He keeps me in the loop too. He's provided me with contacts with our guests. He, you know, basic intelligence about what's happening with the medical stuff and also war stuff. You know, just a wonderful guy. So, and there's a lot of people like that, but some are more focused than others. And David has a background in medical equipment and stuff like that. But I understand that the mission is changing a little bit. It may be going further than just providing medical equipment and things like that, of all kinds, but also dealing with the wounded people.
Yeah, there's an effort right now to maybe help with some specific war wounds and soldiers that need prosthetics and that type of thing, and we'll see where that effort goes. But it's definitely one of the things that's been in topic of discussion lately on how we can assist with that type of thing.
Now, where are your major bases over there, or where is your major when you go over to Ukraine?
So we've established our, for lack of a better term, forward operating base right in a town called Malinsky. You're familiar with.
It's right in the center.
Right in the center, right?
It really is right in the center.
Yeah, right in the center. So it's pretty well placed. It's also a major railway runs through there, right? Through the kind of a hub for transportation going east to west, west east, and so a lot of the refugees do pass through there. Some stay. And so that's kind of where we've established our base of operations in Ukraine, and we'll range out from there. But as I mentioned, there's no lack of, if you're looking for, things to help, for areas to help, it's endless. So you'll find more than you want. And so we've adopted a few places around Malinsky. There's an orphanage in the town of Ternopil that we've been assisting. There's a hospital in Malinsky. We found what might equate to a hospice or an elderly center just recently that was heartbreaking. And so we adopted that. There's 40, and people don't think about this a lot, right? But elderly, right? A lot of the elderly didn't have the capability to leave. I mean, they were stuck. If they didn't have somebody that was going to help them, they weren't physically capable of becoming a refugee. And so you just hear these stories of people's grandparents just waiting it out in cities that were being shelled. In the case of the hospice that we found, there's about 40 elderly folks in there that were displaced from cities that were under attack, and they have a staff of 3 or 4 people trying to assist them. They've got one cook with a couple of kids trying to cook meals for these 40 people, and you go in there and you smell, urine, and it just, there's not enough care for them.
It's not sanitary. Yeah.
No, it's not sanitary conditions. It's really a heartbreaking situation when you see them.
The system's broken down, and the usual ways of care and
they don't have anybody else to help them, right? They've been displaced to this spot, and they're in the situation they're in, and they've got what they've got. And
but I wonder if even the places that are established are not working properly because of the, we know the hospitals are not working the way they usually should.
It's very hard to have anything functioning properly when you're facing bombardment from Russian artillery. With the best will in the world. I mean, that disrupts the whole supply chain.
What are they thinking?
They're not thinking. They don't care. I mean, the point is that if you look throughout history in Russia, they don't care. They have a strong man, and they used to complete and utter violence. It was the same in the Second World War with the Red Army. It's the same now in Ukraine. There is something about the Russian mentality. Obviously, you can't necessarily characterize a whole nation.
Not everyone, but there's certainly a tendency.
There is certainly a tendency about it. They have a different vision of life. They have for many people. You look in the 19th century in Poland, for example, being Polish was kept alive by the great poets. There was this idea: you are Polish. Doesn't matter what's going on around you.
It was a country of the mind.
Mickiewicz. Russia is a country. There's no. It seems to me there's no similar view. Russia is a country where geography is what defines you as a Russian. We have to have more space than anybody else. I mean, there's the joke told about the chap from Russia and the chap from Switzerland. The chap from Russia is living in a little mud hut somewhere, or wooden hut somewhere, no fresh water, no heating, goes to visit his friend in Switzerland who lives in a lovely flat in Geneva or somewhere, got everything. And the chap in Switzerland says, why do you come and live in Switzerland? Look, you've got food, you've got water, you've got electricity, you've got everything you need. And the Russian says to him, what? And live in such a small country? I mean, that may be apocryphal, but it sort of sums up the Russian mentality.
It's a great story. I like those sort of jokes.
That's what I'm saying for Putin. And there's sort of the self-serving. Oh, I'm now Peter the Great. I'm not actually occupying Ukraine, I'm taking bits of Russia back. But he tried to claim that about Sweden in the 17th century.
I think he's more Ivan than Peter the Great.
But the point is, if you want to
Peter
take
the
that
Great
to its
looked
logical
west.
conclusion, let's go back to 1492,
Indeed.
when Muscovy was a tiny little statelet. I mean, how far do you get with these historic? And it's really true for Russia. It's true for all sorts of countries which use some sort of historical justification for taking over somebody else's land. Where do you? What date is the date you choose? Because-
1457 start for Tsar Ivan the Terrible.
Exactly.
And before that, as you say. yeah,
Before that, they were all
this
part.
is-
They were essentially part of Ukraine or
a load of
whatever.
rubbish
So,
is what it is.
but these people do it because they get away with it.
Yeah.
And we're not strong enough. And as I mentioned in the previous segment, you know, we have 3 European leaders now who are going to Ukraine, and they're not going to say to Zelensky, yes, how can we get you some more 155mm howitzers? Let's get you some more tanks. They're going to say, well, this is, you know, I think that's what they get. I have no information, so I don't know, but I suspect they're going to be saying, you know, there will come a time when you have to negotiate with Putin, so why don't you think about that now rather than later? I suspect, but I don't know. But
Let me throw a question to. Thanks for that. I love when you get off on this.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
thank you.
Not an opinion on this at all. I mean,
Yeah, it is having opinions. But opinions work well on TV. But I wanted to ask Bruce about the specifics of this trip, because you just arrived a couple of days ago. David put me in touch with you, but we'd met before, but
Yes.
I knew who you were. And I said, well, get me his number, because I couldn't find a bloody card anywhere. And so what are you going to be doing when you leave Warsaw?
So we've
Give us a
tried to establish kind of a regular rhythm for our team and for also the volunteers that come to help us, and that is that we've established a supply chain where we'll push goods forward into, there's a warehouse in Ravrushka just over the border, and then we've got some more warehouse space in Malinsky, and we start to push goods forward, and then
What goods are you pushing?
all types of humanitarian aid. So you know, we have got involved with a lot of medical supplies, but we also look at food sometimes. Where there's clothing items
But
sometimes.
no body armor and things like that?
No, we are staying away from that because we're a humanitarian organization.
All
and so-
military, no military.
yeah,
type stuff.
we don't want to cross that line into anything that's like a paramilitary option. Now we have.
A question worth asking.
No, absolutely. It's a great question. And we have tried to supply some of the things that are more specific and that are been asked to support the volunteers in the military, but they're very specific medical items like tourniquets, for example. But we've shied away from drones or body armor or helmets. Just don't want to cross that line of humanitarian work.
And
So-
you're staying well behind the lines, right? Have you been to the? I mean, you're not going to the edge of the Donbass or anything.
No, for us right now, there's no reason. There's
You have plenty to do.
There's plenty to do. There's plenty of refugees that need help. There's no reason for us to do something risky.
Yeah.
And so it's all managed risk, right? We have taken advantage of.
Well, you're in a war zone, the whole country.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Right.
As people may not understand, but first of all, it's so far away, particularly for Americans or
Yeah.
Chinese or somebody like that. People from these sort of greater powers that aren't on the ground there, we can
Yeah.
say. They're involved. But
We've tried to help, and sometimes when something comes across, our purview, like Kyiv, for example, there was an opportunity for us to get a couple buses of people out.
to Kharkiv,
Out of Kyiv, and so we got involved in that just because there was a need, and they asked us to help, and we said, yeah, sure, well.
Yeah. There's another group, THIS Ukraine, that might be worth meeting. I'm gonna introduce you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
On,
Anytime we can find some synergy with somebody else.
I think you need to be in touch with them.
Shared objective. Or
They're
shared
like
goal.
you. They're a smaller group,
Yeah.
but they are doing lots of humanitarian, and they do a lot of driving back and forth. And so you never know where you might need something delivered. They can help, or you can help. them with some,
And sometimes those opportunities just pop up, and then we'll try to fulfill that need. But we've fallen into a more regular schedule recently. Just we were working so hard, people were burning out trying to do as much as they could because the need is so great. So you just try to do more and more and more. So we try to kind of create a schedule of we deliver this day, we reset the next day, reload the trucks, then go hit this hospital, then go to this hospice, then go to that orphanage, and create a little bit of a schedule, almost like a route, right?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They've got routes, and they send a driver, and it gets pretty confusing and crazy sometimes. Because you got to pick people up and take them here, and then you got to deliver things over here, and different cities, and people are waiting to get out and come back over the border. On this trip in, we are planning on going on heading up to Kyiv and meeting with some government officials there. And we'll just ask what we've done all along, which is ask the question. Some people in the Zelensky government, at the deputy level. Like health ministers? Yeah, and just ask the question. And maybe we'll be able to help, maybe we don't, but you don't know if you're going to ask the question.
Of course.
Right?
So
we'll tell them what we've been doing, and we'll ask, hey, what can we do? Endless networking is needed to make these efforts coherent, because the last thing you want to do is be wasting time and energy. It's going to happen anyway, but you want to try to avoid it. And what I've seen too is a lot of people come in, making either A, making assumptions, or B, throwing resources at the problem without asking the question about what the real need is, right? Or where should I put my efforts, right? Where should I put my resources? Right, and you have, volunteers need to be in the right place. They can't just be, wandering about the countryside. They can be, but it's not very helpful, is it? There was a lot of that early on.
It needs organizing.
Yeah. There was a lot of it. Early on, it was self-deployed folks just showing up, with no plan. I want to help. I want to help.
I want to help, and I want to put this on Instagram. That I'm sorry to be cynical. I think there's a certain amount of this social mediaism. I mean, people you and I know, or people you know of.
There's a lot of ego prophetism.
Why are you suddenly popping up in Ukraine? What can you actually really offer, other than the fact, hello, I'm here. Behind me is a bombed-out railway station or whatever it is.
And this is the point. This is why I'm very interested with Bruce being here, is that because of the war fatigue and things have dropped off, it's not as sexy as it was. And actually, if you've done any corresponding in wars or been in wars, as you have, Bruce, seen some dicey situations, then you realize that it's actually very boring most of the time, except for when it's not. Punctuated by moments of stark terror. Yes.
A bit like flying an airplane.
And in Nicholas's case, sartorial resplendence. Yes. Look that resplendence up. You got your back.
Very important.
Yeah.
And the old joke about the difference between the British Army and the American Army. In the American Army, everybody looks the same in uniform, but different out of uniform. In the British Army, everybody looks different in uniform, but the same out of uniform.
That's hilarious.
I had not heard that one before, actually.
Have you heard that?
No, I had not heard that one.
That's a really good one.
It is a good one.
Yeah. So, okay. So on this particular trip, now tell us how you go over. What's your sort of route to go to the center of Ukraine? Can you take us through?
Maybe
people like it, or is it a secret?
But maybe it's something you don't want to.
Is it a secret?
Depending on what sort of territory you.
Is it a secret?
I don't know.
No. There's only so many roads.
Yeah.
But
we try to stay in the main roads. Some of the back ones are back roads.
But do you go by Lviv, or do you go straight on the Kyiv road and then cut down?
No, we go through Lviv typically, and then through Ternopil, and then into Zelensky, and then from there we'll kind of spread out.
We picked up somebody from Zelensky in the first week of the war, a lady and her baby.
Oh, really?
With the fellow who organizes Trusty Rusty, Russell. You need to meet him. At least get in touch, right?
Sure.
And we went over to see what was what the first few days, but also just to Lviv, not further. And and help this woman who was a relative of his fiance, and we brought her up. But she took a train from there, from the place where your base is, and it's like 3 hours, or it was like 4 hours or something on the train to get to Lviv. So we just waited, and she got there on time. It was crazy. People hanging all over that train. I mean, just lines, and you know, like a scene from Dr. Zhivago.
I was going to think about the train journey in Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah. It looked like that.
Also chaos caused by the Russians.
Also caused by the Russians, yeah. You have just look at Zhivago, and you have a sort of, they are causing a lot of trouble, aren't they?
They do cause a lot. They are a nation that causes.
They're not very
trouble.
organized. This is the problem, except when their own personal interests. There's no sense of civic duty in Russia.
Well, but
very little of it. There is.
But of course, this is because those in charge
enough.
of the country
Yeah.
have no interest. I mean,
Well, they're stripping. Yeah.
Putin and his merry men, and there never seem to be any women involved, so we'll say Putin and his merry men, have essentially stripped the country of anything that it ever had, and which is presumably why the army is doing so badly, because this much talked about reformation or re-equipping of the Russian armed forces seems to have had zero effect, because we can only assume that a lot of the money also didn't get quite from the centre to the army, and it was sort of diverted en route. But I can't imagine there's much central government spending in Russia on far-flung parts of Russia.
Did you ever get? I agree. Do you ever get this feeling? I'm going to ask Bruce too, because he's a soldier. Do you ever get this feeling that you feel sorry for the? Because I get this. I feel sorry for those Russian soldiers as well, because they're just put in this position. They don't know why they're there, really, what they're doing. I mean, this was kind of. I was thinking about this before the war ever started, because I think it.
Yes.
You studied military history at all. You know what their army is like. I've seen it up close in Georgia, in the Georgia War. But do you have that feeling? It's like I get this feeling. It's not sentimental. It's just like a kind of sick feeling that the waste, you see, that's what it is, isn't it? Do you have that at all?
Oh, absolutely. A waste of it's a waste of effort, money, people, right? Human resource, like.
Yeah.
And you know, as you kind of alluded to, if you're familiar with the way the Russian army works, I mean, the guys at the bottom, the conscripts, it's a very it's an army that's driven very much by the officers and the leaders, and they don't communicate, they don't empower their junior soldiers to know what's going on, to be in a situation to carry the mission forward if the leader is gone. I mean, they don't know what to do, and they're not told, and the culture there is that they're not going to be told. Right?
This is a good point.
Right. So you're right. I mean, they are a victim here in some respects. Not that they haven't done horrible things too, but at the same time, they're showing up and just
boys in a weird position. They don't know what they're doing. The command breaks down. I mean, this was easily predictable. This was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I had conversations with Nicholas and other people about that before.
Yeah. And
they ever invaded. What would happen if they did invade?
And think about the Russian people
and
too.
Logistics, no food and whatever. Yeah. You get a bunch of young guys out there. Terrible equipment. It's cold. They don't have proper food. They don't have petroleum, gas, whatever you want to call it.
And that's, of course, without taking into account the fact whether some of these people even sabotaged their own vehicles because they knew what was coming. They didn't want to be involved. I mean, when that column north of Kyiv stopped for a couple of weeks, it seems that analysis seemed to suggest that was no accident, that the people actually driving the vehicles suddenly realised what was happening and thought, well, this is not for us. We'll just pretend our vehicles are broken down.
Well, there was some of that. It was detailed, and they overheard conversations, too.
Exactly.
But this is just to say that the chaos was predictable, and it's not really surprising that it happened. And so the waste was predictable. I mean, it's just... The whole enterprise makes no sense if you think about it, right?
Well, it doesn't, but the Russian military strategy has always seems to have been, it doesn't matter because we have infinite amounts of people, so we have more people than anybody else, so we don't care how many of them we lose because ultimately we have more than you. So Stalin said, and then quantity is its own quality.
And then they come over and cause all this destruction, and then fellows like Bruce, sitting in Utah, talking to his friends, and they say, gosh, let's do something. That's the American spirit. It still remains, British too, that offers some kind of hope that people will do this, and that's the kind of spirit we need to harness more of, and less of the oligarchic thinking that's going on. You know, you look at the oligarchs, you say, oh, those Russian oligarchs. We have the same problem in the United States. It's just in a different way. A friend of mine used to say, the difference between the United States, the ex-soldier like you, and he'd been in Vietnam, though, this older guy, and he said, the thing about America that's different from all the other countries is in America, in other countries they steal, no, in America we only steal a little. In the other countries they steal everything. The people in charge.
But yeah, you're right, it is changing, that's what.
Yeah.
But it's changed. That's another subject. I want to come back to Bruce.
What amount of theft
we're running down to a couple of minutes in the show. I want to give you the last word.
Okay.
What do you think, from having started with the Afghanistan situation, what do you see, and then moving over here to Ukraine, what do you see as the future? What's the August mission statement for the near future?
Well, the near future, I mean, we're committed to this. We're committed to this, to Ukraine and to helping these people. We feel like it's a very August mission, if you will. And so, you know, I'm not sure what that end state looks like yet. Is, you know, what's going to be the thing that makes us decide, hey, we're done here, it's time to move on. But one of the things that August Mission does do, right, is we want to go where the problem is. And we want to try to solve the hard problems, and we want to try to do the things that other people aren't doing. So right now, I mean, when we were trying to help in Afghanistan, and then Ukraine came up, so all right, well, now we got to do both. So we haven't forgotten our friends in Afghanistan, but we're here too. And you know, I don't know how thin we can spread ourselves. Hopefully, there's not another big, you know, disaster looming. But
I don't think we can afford it. We can't afford this.
We can't afford this disaster.
It's like asymmetric. I've come up with a phrase to coin this: asymmetrical aid.
Oh, I like it.
Do you like that?
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna steal that actually.
You can. Please do.
Thank you.
Yeah, please steal it. I threw it out there because I was trying to think of a way to how you talk about all of this, and then it sort of popped into my mind out, you know, one day. Asymmetrical aid, you know, asymmetrical warfare, obviously. But asymmetrical aid seems to be, I mean, Dunkirk is by definition, the whole thing was asymmetrical, right? So, thanks for doing, Bruce Roberts, thanks for coming all the way from Utah and organizing what has become a very successful and August mission, and it's great to have you on,
thank you,
show.
Sir.
Thank you very much
Appreciate your time
for being here.
and this opportunity.
Thank you. And please feel free to use the show to promote yourself, and they'll get a great history lesson from Mr. Nicholas Richardson over there.
Thank you.
Nicholas, nice cravat. I meant to tell you, and it's not matching, but
well, it shouldn't match actually technically.
Yeah, I just I feel that Bruce and I will definitely dress up more for the next time to compete.
We've been
with you.
inspired.
Yeah, we've
good,
been inspired.
good.
And thank you very much for teaching me the meaning of sartorial.
My pleasure.
Okay, that's all we have for this show. I want to thank Bruce Roberts once again from August Mission. Look him up online, and to follow what they're doing. And Nicholas Richardson, as always, taught James Bond everything he knows, and then forgot it.
Exactly.
See you on the next show. Thanks for watching.
Ударите.